I stared at the ornate mahogany casket, my eyes blurred by a constant stream of tears. The sea of mourners had long since departed, leaving me alone to say my final goodbye to Dad. The suffocating silence was shattered by Derek's voice. "So, how much are we getting from your old man?" I whipped around, eyes wide with disbelief. "What? His estate?" Derek pressed, no trace of sympathy in his tone. "The inheritance? How much will it be?" A lump formed in my throat as the weight of his callous words hit me. This was the man I'd married, the one who'd professed his undying love and support just months ago. Yet here he stood, mere hours after we'd laid Dad to rest, fixated solely on potential financial gain. I don't know the details," I stammered, still reeling from the emotional whiplash. Derek scoffed. "Well, you better find out. Your old man was loaded. We're entitled to our cut." Anger flared within me, a fire ignited by the stark contrast between the man before me and the one I thought I'd married. "My father just died, Derek? Show some respect." His eyes narrowed. "Don't get all sanctimonious on me. This is the real world, babe. Money talks." I opened my mouth to retort, but the words died on my lips. In that moment, it was as if the veil had been lifted, revealing the true nature of the man I'd vowed to spend my life with. The man whose ambition and greed clearly outweighed any love for me. Choking back tears, I stormed out of the room, Derek's voice trailing behind me. "We're not going to struggle like your parents did, Marlene. You hear me? This is our chance." His words echoed through the cavernous halls of the funeral home, a cruel reminder that the life I thought we had was nothing but an illusion. I couldn't shake the feeling of disillusionment as memories from happier times resurfaced, taunting me with the facade Derek had so expertly constructed. Our early years played like an idyllic montage, his hand gently resting on the small of my back as we strolled through the park, his warm smile as we dined by candlelight, his infectious laughter echoing through our modest apartment. In those days, money held little importance for us. Derek was content working as a high school English teacher, believing that impacting young minds was the noblest of callings. I poured my heart into the local nonprofit, inspired by Dad's philanthropic spirit. We lived simply, but our bond was rich with understanding and shared purpose. Perhaps that's what made Derek's descent into greed so insidious. The shift was gradual, like a malignant growth festering unnoticed. At first, the changes were subtle, a newfound fixation on designer labels, an inexplicable disdain for his once beloved profession, trivial indulgences that I naively overlooked, blinded by the idealistic notion that the man I loved remained unchanged at his core. Our first major clash came when Derek abruptly resigned from teaching without discussing it with me first. "This job is beneath me," he scoffed, tossing his school ID onto the kitchen counter. "I'm destined for greater things." I stared at him, bewildered. "But you always said teaching was your calling. What's going on, Derek?" He waved a dismissive hand. "I've outgrown that mindset, babe. It's time to aim higher, starting with finding a career worthy of my talents." In the days that followed, Derek's disdain for frugality became apparent. Date nights transformed into reservations at opulent restaurants where the wine list cost more than my monthly salary. Weekends once spent hiking or visiting museums gave way to conspicuous shopping excursions, our humble abode rapidly filling with designer furnishings and ostentatious art pieces. "You deserve the finer things in life," he'd insist whenever I questioned the extravagance, his words laced with a strange undercurrent of resentment. My pleas for restraint and open dialogue fell on deaf ears. Derek had been consumed by an insatiable hunger, one that steadily drove a wedge between us. The man I'd married, the one who found joy in simplicity and connection, was slipping further away with each materialistic indulgence. Derek's fixation with wealth and status only intensified as the months ticked by. Our once peaceful home became a battleground, with heated arguments erupting over his reckless spending habits. "This Rolex cost more than my entire year's salary," I shouted, waving the ostentatious timepiece in his face. "We can't afford these kinds of luxuries, Derek," he scoffed, snatching the watch back. "Don't be so provincial, Marlene. This is the lifestyle we deserve, the one your rich daddy enjoyed while looking down his nose at the rest of us." The bitterness in his tone struck me like a physical blow. "My father worked hard for everything he built," I shot back, fighting the sting of tears. and he never flaunted his wealth like some arrogant buffoon. Derek's eyes narrowed dangerously. Well, now it's my turn. Our turn. We're not living like paupers anymore. Desperate to make him see reason, I tried a different tack. Don't you remember how happy we were when money wasn't a priority? We had everything we needed, each other, fulfilling work, a warm home. Had being the operative word, he sneered. I'm not settling for your hippie ideals and second-hand dregs anymore. Either get on board or get out of my way. The venom in his words left me reeling. This angry, materialistic stranger had fully consumed the man I once knew and loved. In the days that followed, the disintegration of our marriage accelerated at a dizzying pace. Derek grew more distant, his routine now centered around glad-handing with the city's elite and ingratiating himself with wealthy social circles. If I dared broach the subject of his wasteful spending, he'd brush me off with thinly veiled contempt. Don't worry your pretty little head about finances, dear, he purred in that mocking tone. Just leave it to me. It wasn't until Elena, my closest friend, pulled me aside one afternoon that I began to see the full extent of Derek's betrayal. Marlene, I have to tell you something, she said uneasily, her warm brown eyes filled with pity. Lowering her voice, she continued, I saw Derek having lunch with some woman last week, at that new high-end bistro downtown. My heart plummeted. What? Are you sure? Elena nodded solemnly. Honey, I'm so sorry. From the way they were interacting, it seemed like more than just a business meeting. Bile rose in my throat as her implication washed over me. Of course, in his endless pursuit of wealth and status, Derek's indifference towards me had given way to outright infidelity. The once solid foundation of our marriage had crumbled, reduced to rubble by his greed and wandering eye. Choking back tears, I met Elena's mournful gaze and forced out the words that had been weighing on me for far too long. I think I need to leave him. Despite my newfound resolve to leave Derek, extricating myself from the marriage proved easier said than done. Not only did his deceit and greed continue unabated, but his professional life began spiraling out of control as well. It started with the little things. Arriving home progressively later from work, absently scrolling through his phone during what few conversations we still had. When I finally mustered the courage to confront him, his excuse was always the same. Just trying to get ahead at the firm, babe. You know how it is. Except I didn't know. The Derek I'd married had loved his job teaching high school English, finding genuine fulfillment in fostering young minds. This obsessive, workaholic behavior was yet another glaring red flag that the man I vowed to spend my life with was long gone. The cracks in his professional facade became increasingly apparent over the following weeks. Meetings with supervisors held behind closed doors, urgent hushed phone calls, the vacant stare that often clouded his eyes, all signs that his career was hanging by a thread. One evening I returned home from the nonprofit to find Derek slumped on the couch, disheveled and reeking of stale liquor. You're home early, he slurred, not bothering to lift his head from where it lolled against the armrest. I bristled at his flippant tone. Derek, what's going on? You're worrying me. With a grunt, he hauled himself into a sitting position and fixed me with a bleary glare. What's going on is that I'm about to lose my job because the bigwigs don't appreciate my innovative strategies. He sneered the last words, making air quotes with his fingers. My brow furrowed. This was the first mention of any workplace issues. Why didn't you tell me? We could have discussed it, tried to. Discussing it isn't going to save my career, he snapped, cutting me off. Those elitist pencil pushers have had it out for me from day one. They're just intimidated by my potential. I opened my mouth, but he barreled onwards, working himself into an irate frenzy. Well, screw them. I don't need their pathetic six-figure gig. There are way bigger opportunities on the horizon, opportunities that'll make their bourgeois little heads spin. Unsure how to respond, I could only stare in stunned silence as Derek ranted and raved about corporate conspiracies and his bright future. His words may have been fueled by the hazy indignation of alcohol, but they hinted at the wounded pride and bitter resentment steadily poisoning his psyche. In that moment, it became clear. The stable career and comfortable life we'd built together no longer captivated Derek's ambitions. Our once modest dreams had been supplanted by a ravenous hunger for status, power, and wealth. Lots of wealth. The next afternoon, Elena called with another bombshell that obliterated any remaining illusions about my husband's integrity. "Marlene, you're not going to like this," she began uneasily. "But I saw Derek meeting with some woman again yesterday, at that park near downtown." My grip tightened on the phone as realization settled in like a leaden weight. "Let me guess, not the kind of meeting you'd expect between coworkers?" There was a weighted pause before Elena exhaled slowly. "No, honey, definitely not." All at once, the pieces began clicking into place. Derek's frequent late nights, his newfound obsession with wealth and status, his indifference towards me, it all stemmed from another woman. Another life he was building, one untethered from the marriage vows he'd so carelessly discarded. My next words came out in a choked whisper. "He's been cheating on me, hasn't he?" Elena's pained silence was confirmation enough. In that moment, the floodgates shattered, a torrent of rage and betrayal crashing over me as I realized the true depths of my husband's selfish depravity. Through my sobs, I managed to choke out one final question. Does she have money?" Elena's response cleaved what little remained of my heart in two. "Yeah. From what I overheard, she's loaded." After Elena's revelation, a numb disbelief enveloped me for days. Part of me still clung to the desperate hope that Derek's indiscretions were just a momentary lapse, that the man I loved was still in there somewhere, buried beneath the avarice and betrayal. That flicker of naive optimism was extinguished one frigid evening when the evidence of his unfaithfulness slapped me squarely across the face. I had returned home late from a charity fundraiser, my body and spirit drained from putting on a brave face all night. Padding into the kitchen, I was surprised to find the lights on and Derek's laptop open on the counter. At first, I dismissed it as him simply forgetting to log off before leaving for wherever it was he disappeared to these days. But as I drew closer, something on the screen caught my eye, an unmistakable charge from a high-end jewelry boutique. My heart stuttered as I clicked to scrutinize the charge further. There it was in glaring digital font, a receipt for a diamond tennis bracelet totaling nearly $10,000. Ice flooded my veins as the sick realization dawned on me. This was no treat for his devoted wife. This was an extravagant gift, purchased with funds from our joint savings account, the one meant for our future and security. The one Derek had been steadily draining to bankroll his tawdry affair. White-hot anger lanced through me, mouth going dry as I heard the telltale jingle of keys at the front door. Derek sauntered in a moment later, seeming not to notice me at first. It wasn't until I cleared my throat loudly that his gaze snapped over, eyes widening fractionally. "Oh, hey, babe. Didn't expect you home, so. Who is she?" I cut him off, jaw clenched. He blinked dumbly. "Who's who?" "Don't play dumb," I snapped, snatching up the laptop and shoving the incriminating receipt in his face. "Who's the woman you've been spending our savings on?" Understanding dawned across Derek's features, swiftly morphing into a sneer. "So what if I got somebody a little gift? I've more than earned the right to spend my money how I see fit." My hand reflexively flew to my stinging cheek before I even registered the crack of his backhand. "Don't you dare talk down to me," he snarled, eyes glittering with contempt. "If it weren't for me, you'd still be a washed-up nobody slumming with the paupers." Shock and pain paralyzed me as Derek unleashed the full torrent of his vitriol. "Let's be honest here, Marlene. Our marriage was a mutually beneficial arrangement, nothing more. I played the doting husband while you dangled the carrot of your old man's fortune in front of me. Well, I'm sick of chasing scraps." He grabbed a fistful of my hair, wrenching my head back so our faces were inches apart. The acrid reek of bourbon and expensive cologne assailed my senses. "It's time you held up your end of the bargain. I want access to that trust fund, all of it. Because let's face facts. I'm the only adult in this relationship, the one with actual ambition and drive. Without me, you'd still be a pathetic little charity case living off daddy's scraps." His words lacerated my soul, finally obliterating any remnants of the honorable man I thought I'd married. This cruel, domineering monster was the true Derek Hollister. A black-hearted conman who had masterfully played me for a fool using the oldest trick in the book. He released me with a disdainful shove, letting my body crumple limply to the floor as he stalked off, already dialing his phone. "Hey baby, it's me," he purred. "Clear your evening. Daddy's about to come into some money." I kept my head bowed as Derek stormed back into the kitchen, his expensive loafers clicking menacingly on the tile. A tremor ran through me, every instinct screaming at me to flee, but I remained rooted to the spot, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. "Well," he sneered, grabbing a fistful of my hair and yanking my head back. "I'm waiting for an explanation, you ungrateful little—" "There is no inheritance," I interrupted, the words tumbling out in a breathless rush. "Not for you, at least." Derek's face contorted in an incredulous sneer. "What the hell are you talking about?" Steeling myself, I met his gaze unflinchingly. My father's assets and holdings were all locked into an irrevocable trust after his death. Yeah, in order for either of us to access a single cent, we both have to agree. Comprehension sank in, quickly followed by disbelief. You're lying." "I'm not," I stated it simply, matter-of-factly. Those were the conditions he stipulated, a final test to judge the character of the person I chose as a husband. Derek opened his mouth, but I pressed on, determined to unleash the torrent of pent-up emotion that had been simmering all these years. "He knew, Derek. My father saw through your facade from the beginning. He recognized you for the materialistic, self-serving leech that you are." The words spilled forth like shrapnel, each one laced with a lifetime's worth of anger and disgust. "I was just a means to an end for you. A convenient pathway to the fortune you thought was your birthright. Well, let me enlighten you." My voice dropped to a seething hiss. "The only birthright you'll ever receive is a parade of sleepless nights, wondering how you could have been so blind to sacrifice everything for greed." A vein pulsed visibly in Derek's forehead as I issued the killing blow. "This marriage is over. Consider the settlement from my personal savings your reward for playing the part so convincingly. It's more than you deserve, but at least now you won't drag anyone else down with your pathetic existence." The resounding slap echoed through the cavernous kitchen like a gunshot. My head whipped to the side from the force of the blow, the sharp sting blossoming across my cheek as I crumpled to the floor. Derek towered over me, chest heaving with unbridled rage. You ungrateful, treacherous bitch," he roared, specks of spittle flying from his lips. "After all I sacrificed for you? For US?" With a feral snarl, he hauled me up by the collar of my blouse until our faces were mere inches apart. His next words dripped with venom. "You'll be the one wondering, Marlene. Wondering how you'll survive without a single penny to your trust fund name. Because I'll make sure every friend, every business associate knows exactly how low you stooped to try and rip me off." He shoved me away, my back slamming against the counter as I fought to remain upright. "This isn't over, not by a long shot. You hear me?" Chest heaving, eyes wild with fury, Derek snatched up his coat and stormed towards the front door, pausing only to lob one final parting shot. "Have fun with your precious charities, you pathetic do-gooder, because my dear, dear wife... That's all you'll have left when I'm through." The door slammed with deafening finality, leaving me huddled on the kitchen floor, cradling my throbbing face as the enormity of my situation washed over me. Derek's path of destruction was only just beginning, and whether I was prepared or not, I was squarely in the crosshairs. In the days following Derek's explosive departure, I found myself adrift, unmoored by the jarring reality that my life had become unrecognizable. The cozy home we'd built, the dreams we'd shared, all desecrated by one man's insatiable greed. My initial instinct was to withdraw, to lick my wounds and mourn the demise of my naively idealistic notions about love and partnership. But the more I dwelled on Derek's vicious threats, the more a simmering fury took root. He wanted to drag my name through the mud? To punish me for seeing through his charade? Well, two could play at that game. It started small at first. A carefully worded email to our property manager, ensuring Derek had no way to siphon further funds from our joint accounts. Another message to my assistant at the nonprofit, alerting her that I would need to take some personal time. Then came the bigger moves, executed with a calculated precision that would make even Derek's mercenary soul proud. First, I orchestrated a video call with Alina, filling her in on every lurid detail of Derek's betrayal and demanding she back my version of events, should he try any underhanded tactics. Her expression shifted from horror to grim resolution as I outlined my gambit. Next, I drafted the divorce papers, employing the shrewdest family law firm in the city to guarantee Derek received not a penny more than what I deemed fair restitution, a settlement payment of $200,000 from my personal trust, enough to ensure he could slink out of my life forever, but not so exorbitant that he could squander it indefinitely. Elena insisted on being present for the signing, watching with poorly concealed disdain as Derek scrawled his name with a trembling hand. "I hope you realize how lucky you are," she said, voice low and filled with quiet menace. "If it were up to me, you'd be leaving with nothing but the clothes on your back, you spineless gravy-trained." "Elena, it's done," I interjected firmly, as much for her benefit as to halt Derek's wounded sputtering. "He's gotten what he deserves. More than he deserves, even." The implication hung heavy in the air as the two of us stared him down, daring him to protest, to unload the inevitable torrent of vitriol I knew was simmering behind those smoldering eyes. But after an agonizing moment, Derek simply gathered up the papers and stormed towards the exit without a word. Just before disappearing through the door, he paused, turning to fix me with one final glower. "This won't be the last you hear from me, Marlene." It wasn't a threat, but a snarled promise, saturated with a bitterness so viscous it was nearly tangible. Then, like a noxious vapor dissipating in the breeze, he slipped out the door and was gone. It would be weeks before I heard from Derek again, the eerie silence only periodically shattered by news of him liquidating assets or reports of increasingly erratic public outbursts. A small, vindictive part of me relished every lurid detail, savoring his downward spiral into irrelevance. But I knew this temporary reprieve was precisely that, temporary. Sooner or later, Derek's rage and indignation would reach a crescendo, and when it did, I intended to be ready. Because while he'd been content to leech from others for sustenance, I was preparing to fight this battle the same way I'd built my entire life, through hard work, perseverance, and a steadfast refusal to let anyone or anything break me. Not even the man who had once sworn to cherish me, in sickness, health, and utter betrayal of every vow. The first whispers began trickling in a few weeks after Derek's unceremonious exit from my life. Snippets of information delivered by well-meaning friends and colleagues, each one more damning than the last. "Did you hear Derek got fired from his job? Apparently he was skimming funds for personal use. I ran into Derek downtown the other day. He was drunk, ranting about you and your dad's money like a man possessed. Derek's been blacklisted by every law firm in the city after that courtroom outburst. He's become a total pariah." At first, I shrugged off the gossip as idle chatter, gossamer threads of hearsay that held no true weight or substance. But as the reports persisted, it became impossible to ignore the harsh reality. Derek's unraveling was veering rapidly into total meltdown territory. It all came to a head during a garden party hosted by Elena to celebrate the launch of her new art gallery. I had been mingling amiably with potential donors when the first piercing shatters of glass shattered the refined ambiance. A chorus of startled gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as Derek stumbled into view, wild-eyed and swaying perilously. "There she is," he bellowed, words slurred and reeking of cheap liquor. "The ungrateful harpy who destroyed everything." Elena's security team immediately moved to intervene, but he shrugged them off with drunken bravado. "Don't try and silence me," Derek raged, spittle flying from his chapped lips. "Everyone here deserves to know what kind of shrew they're dealing with." My cheeks flushed crimson as every eye turned towards me. Clearing my throat, I addressed the owner of the gallery in measured tones. "Please accept my apologies for this disruption. I'll handle." "She played me for a fool, every single one of you," Derek interrupted, his tirade rapidly crescendoing into unhinged raving. "All for the sake of money. Her money." There were audible gasps and shocked whispers. I fixed Derek with a steely glare. "That's enough, Derek. You've embarrassed yourself enough for one evening." But he barreled onward, fueled by an endless wellspring of spite and injured pride. "After everything I sacrificed for our future, she tried to steal my inheritance. Can you believe the audacity?" The words barely registered before a harsh bark of laughter burst forth, unbidden. I couldn't contain the eruption of bitter mirth bubbling up inside me. "Your inheritance?" I echoed incredulously. "Derek, you arrogant, pathetic fool." His jaw went slack, belatedly recognizing the potent mixture of pity and revulsion simmering behind my gaze. "Don't you realize why this happened? Why you've ended up a disgraced, destitute laughingstock?" My voice dropped to a hush, yet carried clearly across the garden. "It's because you put your faith in money rather than the people who actually loved you. You traded ethics and integrity for greed, and now you have nothing. No wealth, no status, not even a shred of self-respect left." My denunciation hung heavy in the air, each word landing like a scathing slap. For one fleeting instant, Derek's bravado faltered. Then, like a rattlesnake rearing back, his expression contorted into one of pure, unhinged loathing. "This isn't over, Marlene," he snarled, fists clenching. "I'll make you regret ever." "Get him out of here," Elena interjected coolly, having materialized at my side with her security detail in tow. Within seconds, Derek was being forcibly hauled away, his drunken imprecations fading into the distance as he was deposited unceremoniously on the sidewalk outside. As tranquility gradually returned to the garden, I felt a gentle pressure on my arm. "Marlene, are you all right?" Elena asked softly, brow creased in concern. I offered her a wan smile and patted her hand reassuringly. "I'm fine. More than fine, really." My gaze drifted towards the path where Derek had been dragged, visualizing his once smug confidence withering beneath the harsh light of public shame and rejection. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom and release. The demise of my treacherous ex-husband was nearly complete, and from the ashes of betrayal, a new, more resilient woman was emerging.